For me, I consider it a great day for Congo and for Africa and for women and for corporate responsibility. Now, most of you know what the conflict minerals bill is about in the Wall Street revisions and the reform law, but you're in the company that sources one of these minerals for DRC, if you are, or one of its neighbors. We applaud you and encourage you, and you got to be a little bit careful. We want folks in the business world to be careful. You have to be transparent about how you are sourcing, and if the chains of your custody are not legitimate and you're funding war, you have to say so publicly and let the consumers decide. That seems simple. Most of the voluntary measures we've tried in the past haven't worked, and well, especially over time. If you look at what's happened with blood diamonds or child labor and the cocoa, the Nestle that whole boycott, voluntary schemes almost always come up short. They don't require anything, and they don't have penalties if you don't do the right thing. So I think this legislation is really a new model for corporate responsibility. We may find some other places where this might fit around the world. I've been thinking about all the tax breaks we give to oil companies when they go into places and take oil out and don't leave anything except the mess. And it seems to me that there are some places where we can begin thinking about this as a new way to go. We think this legislation will make a real difference. We think it will shrink the black market. At least that's the theory under which we created it for these conflict minerals in Central Africa. And if demand drops, prices drop, with less money, there'll be less war. That's kind of free enterprise. I mean, you're getting free enterprise from a guy like me. But it actually does work. If we cut off the market for this stuff, price is going to go down, and it will be in the long run better for everybody. Now, the Americans are leading this. I mean, you've got to understand how far out in front of the world you are, having done this. That's why this is an exciting day to me. The Chinese are stepping up. They're talking about doing it. The Europeans are considering legislation. We didn't consider it. We wrote it. We put it in a bill. And we passed it. And I think, what time is it, 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock today, the president's going to sign it? I'm not sure exactly what time it actually becomes law, but it's just over the hill. And in my view, the real focus ought to be on the Congolese. I lived in Kinshasa. I lived on Boulevard Trangement for 9 months, and I lived and saw the Congolese people. And you gotta love them. They're interesting, they're lovable, they're great music, they're pleasant, they're friendly, they're hardworking, and yet their country has been an absolute mess for back into the 60s. I was there during the last days of Mobutu, and came away feeling that this was probably the country, maybe if you could find one country, that we did the most damage to with our foreign policy over the course of the last 30 or 40 years. And it's still continuing. That's why this war is going on in Eastern Congo. And I have friends who run a hospital in Goma called Heal Africa. So I've been there and I've seen the site, I've seen the people that do the work. The people on the ground are the real heroes. I mean, guys like me, as they say, get a lot of attention, but the real heroes are the people who do that work. And we've come a long way, and it really is because of advocates like you. Without you, this would not happen. Politicians are known to a little hyperbole sometimes, and maybe overstate, but I am not overstating. Without you, this would not happen. That's not just for your ears. It really is the truth as I have experienced it in government. Guys like me can have a good idea, or I can hear a good idea from somebody, but if I don't have somebody out there to work the street, it doesn't work. You can't do it by yourself. There's no Lone Ranger. This is not the Lone Ranger kind of thing. This always requires a lot of people helping. And I also want to thank the women of Congo who have endured awful circumstances over this period of time. I've met them, and I think that their perseverance is something that we could all learn something from. Now, you have a lot to be proud of when it comes to advocates. I want to talk specifically about Human Rights Watch, World Vision, Catholic Relief Services, Amnesty International, and of course, the Enough Project. These individuals did their part, but there's also filmmakers and researchers and an author that I met, Lisa Shannon, all of whom played a part in making this a reality. Africa is a far place away. And, you know, the original selection of the Congo, it was originally Leopold's Congo. He took it because nobody else wanted it. When they were dividing up Africa in the 1890s, they drew the map, and this is a spot in the middle, and little old Belgium, it got nothing. The Germans got theirs, the French got theirs, the British got theirs, the Portuguese and Spanish, and Belgium got nothing. And so finally he said, well, I'll take that. That's because nobody knew what was there or what was possible in the Congo. And it's easy for it to fall off the radar because of its backwardness. When I was there in 1987, calling home from the State Department was a great experience. There were 7 lines out of Kinshasa to Paris, and then it came to the United States. And what you did was, there was a guy down at the embassy, and you told him, I want to call my kids at school tonight. So he'd say, all right, sit by your phone at 8 o'clock. And he would go down to the exchange in Kinshasa and take the wires and move them over to another connection and connect you with your, it cost you $7. And it was, that's the way this country operates. So it's no wonder that all the millions of people that died in Congo and nobody knows about it. It is isolated in many ways from the world. Every week, my staff comes in and shows me something that's been going on. YouTube, or you people use all these, Twitter and all that stuff. And I see protests at Apple stores and protests in front of Intel and Facebook campaigns. You were all over it, and without that, this simply wouldn't happen. And let me tell you something. Passing a law is about 1/10 of making it happen. The 9/10 are getting it implemented and observed. So this is not a celebration and now we can go home and forget about it. Now comes the really tough part, which is actually making sure that now we've got the map from the State Department and we got all this stuff. You know, people will say, oh, we don't know what to do, it's too hard. Well, the State Department gave them a map and said, these are where the maps are, these are where the mines are, and stay out of them. Go over here and get them. And it's very simple, but it's going to take people to watch. So the game is not totally over, and I think that it's important for everybody to understand that. In this country, we have a time span of about 3 minutes, because nothing on television is more than 3 minutes. And after you see that, well, then you forget about it, you go on to the next thing. And you wouldn't even know there was a World Cup that went on, right? I mean, it's all over. That was 2 weeks ago, or whatever. And it's easy to let something like this disappear. You must not let that happen. They need it. They're counting on it to make sure that it gets implemented. Now, the other people that did the work, and I sat in a couple of meetings. I try to stay out of meetings if I can. But there were plenty of meetings with the House Foreign Affairs staff and the Ways and Means staff and the staffs of Mr. Brownback and Mr. Durbin, Mr. Feingold's office, as well as Mr. Dodd, Mr. Frank. All of these people played a part, and the staff are the ones who sat and wrote the words and argued about, is this word too much or is this word too little? And all of that negotiation that went on, I'm very grateful to the staffs who did that. I think that people on the outside of this process don't really understand how it happens. I had a funny phone call with Sam Brownback, and I said, well, we got our bill. And he said, yep, and we're going to save some women. And that's what it was really all about, was saving the lives of women in the Congo.